Breaking into the music business is a unique journey for everyone, but the love of the music and the culture is the connecting tie. These are the untold stories of how Canada's most prominent Black entertainment professionals got started in an industry that never sleeps. I'm Gemini, and welcome to the AMPLIFY Podcast. When you're trying to make it in the entertainment industry, having a mentor who's been there, done that, and can point you in the right direction is critical. But where do you start? How do you convince them that you're worth their time? And do they have to be in the entertainment industry to be invaluable?
My parents always fostered that whatever you put your mind to, with God's help, you can do it. You can make it happen. And they're very, very spiritual and rooted in that, so that helped a great deal. And then there's been teachers and coaches and like sports and whatnot that have always kind of ushered me along and just continued to push like, hey, you can do this, self-confidence aspect. And then again, my business partner now at this point, he's definitely been a great source just as far as this business is concerned. And I've had the pleasure of having really great mentors that have, gone on to do amazing things that I can call on at any point, have those conversations. Some of them are even brand new around like the last 2 years. I think that speaks to my business acumen and them realizing or seeing something in me, and I'm honored for that. And I continue to pay that forward by being that mentor and that individual to young managers and individuals in this business.
For Jermayne Clayton, president of Awesome Productions, mentorship began closer to home. The same is true for media personality Jesse Jones, who watched his parents, Denise and Alan, build their festival empire over time. Inspiring as it was, what Jesse clings to most is his mother's approval before she passed away.
So Jambana One World Festival is kind of her baby of a project. She started that festival, it became the second largest Afro-Caribbean festival in the country, and won a lot of awards. And it was, and when she was diagnosed in 2019, that was the last event she saw. So my brother and I jumped in and were managing that festival. That was Coffee's first time in Toronto. She came for day 2 of the festival. And in the middle of the summer, our mother got diagnosed, and we had the festival in August. And so we had to jump in and really manage that out without her participating at all. Because she was, in and out of hospital, and this is a crazy summer and time. And so the day 1 of the festival, I'm on site, my brother's on site, and we had this plan because mom was going to get, my grandmother was in town, everybody was in town to take care of her, and she was still mobile at that time, but it was ginger, it was gingerly. She'd had brain surgery, there was a lot going on. But this was the last event she saw and came to. And I remember when I got the call that she was coming up through the elevators downtown in the Garden Square in front of Rowe Theater in Brampton. Place is packed. It's the whole city is kind of shut down in that area. And everyone is there. And I was told she was coming up, so I'm going through people, and I'm trying to meet her because I know she's coming up the elevator. And I remember the moment, I walk in and the elevator opens and she's coming out and she's starting to cry, right? And then I'm seeing her. You got to understand, this is her baby. We all know what's happened, and we know it's a very scary time, and we're thinking this could not be good. And she's coming up and hearing it roar the way it always does, and knowing her sons are so this was a very emotional moment. I come up, she comes out, she's crying, I start to cry. And she asked me, I'll never, ever forget these words. She goes, she said, "Are you standing up?" And I looked at her, and my grandma and my aunties and people are around holding her, and she said, that's the first thing she asked me, are you standing up? And I said, yes. And that, I think, was, because I spent my whole life looking for the stamp from her. Like, I've been examining this, you know what I mean? And I can say that, like, that mattered to me. Do you think that my ideas are good? Do you think that I, like, can do things? Anything, like, do you, you know? And always, I knew that, but I really wanted her to, and it was in that moment where I feel like that, are you standing up? Are you prepared? You know what I'm saying? For all that stuff we were talking about, the adversity. Are you prepared? And I think she knew that. The tears were tears of, you know, fear of what's happening, but I think, like, joy too. Like, and then Nana McLean, who's a big time reggae artist, was on stage, and she saw Mom walk out, and she, like, you know, and that was her last event. The event that mattered the most to her, the thing that brought cultures together. And there was this baton thing, I feel like. And so while I was like, what's going on? I felt like it was like, okay, that was it. That was that thing. And so I hold on to that.
And Jesse was equipped to not only take on his parents' legacy, but to build on it and be a responsible role model who, in the words of DJ Four Corners, walks good.
I think that the notion of, oh, I'm not a role model, I just do this, and you shouldn't be looking up to me, is a fallacy. If you're doing anything that's awesome, there's going to be people that look up to you, especially kids. And I think that we all have somewhat of responsibility for that. We're not raising them like their parents are paramount, but we'd be lying to ourselves if we say we're not influences, and I'd rather be a good influence. So much so that, like, one of my early songs that I made that sucked, admittedly now, had, like, a very misogynistic rap verse that I, later on when I started releasing music again, because I stopped and then I restarted, and I was like, I don't want that out there anymore. I don't like that. So I took it down. I work with a lot of women in music. I think that women are better at music than men in a lot of ways because of the way that emotion comes out through it. And I don't know, I always want them to be the star. Like, I always want them to shine. And especially if I'm working with young artists, like, I take them under my wing like a little sister, and, like, I feel like I have a responsibility to protect them and make sure that they're not treated a certain way or not dealt with a certain way. So I think it's just a natural good person type of thing to do. So, like, I don't know that I'm intentional over the top. I think I'm just, like, moving, I just walk good. And if you walk good, you're going to do good by people around you. And I hope that people see that and are, you know, moved to walk good as well.
Walking good and being responsible goes hand in hand for woke leaders and influencers. The more awake we are, the more powerful and perceptive we become. Like Honey Jam founder Ebonnie Rowe. She used her influence to fight misogyny and later turned her fight into mentorship and a safe space for women.
With Honey Jam, the idea when we first started was to fight against the misogyny, specifically in hip hop, and how women were portrayed as bitches and whores who were not to be respected. And, you know, the lyrics, I can't even believe the lyrics. And part of the horror of it is that we would be bumping in the club, and you don't even realize what is being said until you stop yourself. It's like, oh, did he just say run a train on her? What? So it's very seductive to bring people into that. But that was the goal, was to be fighting against the misogyny that was in the lyrics and that was then seeping into the day-to-day behavior of young men towards women. And then we grew from that to be a platform for women who were interested in being in the music industry, mostly as artists, but also as DJs and behind the scenes as producers and different parts of it. So there was still a mentoring aspect, an educational aspect, because we would have workshops and things. And I would believe in doing the most when you have a captive audience. And so we would put up inspirational quotes. Anytime we would have an event, it was like, this is the Honey Jam house, so we're taking over. And we would put up quotes just to make people think in places that they weren't expecting to see them. And the biggest compliment was when they would disappear at the end of the night. This is before the internet, so you can't go on an inspirational Instagram site and see these affirmations, right?
While Ebonnie was spreading self-love and uplifting women, DJ Lissa Monet was lifting the needle and spreading love on dance floors across the globe.
So I've always been an R&B like head. So like I've loved R&B from the beginning of time, like 90s R&B, Faith Evans, 112, Keith Sweat, like R&B has just always been my thing. And I just remember one day saying, I would love to just hear R&B in the club all night long. Because normally what I would do sometimes at the end of my sets at clubs is play slow jams, like the last 10 minutes, because it kind of gets people like chilled out and like, you know what I mean? Because they're all popping bottles and they're drunk and, it just gives the guys a little bit of a like, push to go get the number and, So I was helping people out. So I just said to myself, like, I would love to hear slow jams like all night. So February 2019 or 18, I can't remember because pandemic brain. We had our first slow jam party in the basement of Revival, and like it was just vibes, and it's just kind of grew from there. Like now we've done slow jam parties in Dubai, we've done slow jam parties in Detroit. We're just trying to expand to different cities and, spread the love all over the world.
And that's the beauty of mentorship. Broken down to its core, it's about spreading love and spreading our stories so that we can all eat.
We need to have our stories being told in the rooms where stories are being told. And so, if I'm blessed, to have kids to hand it over to after, that's great. But even to take our things one more generation and to have one more generation of being present where decisions are being made, that's because two people came from an island and recognized an opportunity here and did something. So it's a message to all people, like, creatives, dreamers, wanting to start something. It's about more than us. Like, it really is. Like, it's about more than, like, me. It's about how am I helping my fellow creative? How am I inspiring them? How am I having a conversation with them that's going to keep them going one more day? It's not like a competition thing. We're all able to eat. There's room for all of us. And yeah, I think, that's what drives me.
As Jesse says, we can all eat. And knowing that there's enough food to go around is about letting go of scarcity and moving into a mindset of abundance. That same mindset that spearheaded DJ Lissa Monet to elevate herself while helping other female DJs eat too.
There was a moment where a lot of female DJs were coming up and they were, taking up space as they should have been. And, I started to notice, the gigs weren't coming the way that they were. And at one point it was very frustrating because I started to wonder, like, is it me? am I not, I don't know, am I not a good DJ anymore? You know what I mean? And I think it took me a while to realize that, like, no, there's just an influx of DJs coming, or female DJs in particular. Well, I shouldn't say I realized it. I had a friend tell me, it's like all of them have started this because of you. For the longest time, I was literally the only female DJ in Toronto, kind of moving like a male DJ. I was getting gigs out of town. I was traveling. I was partnering with different brands and stuff like that. And I was branding myself in a way that, I saw other DJs in the States branding themselves. And, I'm grateful for that because it solidified me for a very long time. And I think what happened was a lot of females were inspired by that and, took it upon themselves to learn the craft and now became confident in that moment to start their DJ careers professionally. And once it was brought to me like that, I was like, okay, that's dope. And I started to think about my retirement plan. And around that time, I was also a little bit tired of the club scene. I'd seen enough bottles and enough fights and enough drama, and I was ready to move into like more corporate events. So, with the help of a few friends, I managed to like get a lot of corporate events. And even in once I got into the corporate world, I started realizing I was like double booking myself. So once that was starting to happen, I would just pass the gigs on to other female DJs that I knew. And in that, I started my own boutique DJ agency called Lux Life Sound. And basically, we have like a roster of like 10 to 15 DJs now where we just place them at corporate events. And a lot of it stems from me not wanting them to go through some of the things that I went through when I started out, and to just give them a head start as far as like, getting proper money and getting gigs where, yes, it might be 6 hours, but we fight to make sure that you have a break or you have a lunch break or that they provide you with water or, or food or something. So that's kind of like how my other side business, Lux Life Sound, came to be. It was just one of those things where it was like, I can't even handle the corporate gigs that I'm getting right now. And I know a lot of female DJs who are doing club gigs, but I feel would benefit from corporate gigs, because corporate gigs, let's be real, pays a lot more and it's less risk as far as like getting paid. So it's like, y'all could still do your club stuff and fight with club owners and promoters, but here's an opportunity for me to provide you with, an opportunity to literally play what you want and, make stable money doing that.
DJ Lissa Monet shifted from showing to doing with the birth of Lux Life Sound, and doing is the mantra that Ebonnie lives by.
I am, as I mentioned, a disciple of Malcolm X. So I'm not going to just be a keyboard activist or sit in the back seat and complain and woe is me and when is someone going to do something to help and whatnot. It's like, if you don't like something, do something to change it. I'm very impatient. And so I would try to be parts of other organizations that would sit around spending hours at meetings, try to figure out who should the CEO be and who should run this committee and all of these things. And I'm like, all of those hours spent, we could have done this, 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 and this. But I wasn't the head of the organization, so I'd have to wait through a lot of political stuff, a lot of infighting, and it's like, what are you guys doing? Okay, let me just tap out and start my own thing where I can go at my own pace and make things happen without having to have all of these different levels of approval and input.
Of course, taking charge and not waiting for permission is difficult. And sometimes, as Four Corners learned, it can cause relationships to break down.
You know, people's feelings matter, and whether they want to express them clearly to me or not, they're there. And it is what it is. You know what I mean? So unfortunately, that friendship went shortly after the business relationship. I wish that it didn't. I would still love for it to be like fixed, but that's not entirely up to me, and I accept that. Like, think about it, you spend every day with somebody for years and then you don't. We're all human, we all feel that. Like for a bit, I really just put my head down. I mean, I told myself that, well, I have to work extra hard right now because I have to complete this rebrand and make sure everybody understands what it is that I'm doing. And, you know, none of that was true. I know that now. But at the time, that's what I think that I did that to help myself heal, I guess, and deal with it. And, you know, it kind of worked because I made a lot of strides in that period and since, based on, and to be fair, it was, it cleared up a lot of things for me because, again, just like any relationship, if it's not working well, it hinders things. And once that wasn't there to hinder things anymore, things kind of started moving more smoothly just because that aspect wasn't there. Again, I wish that it was at that time, but I have no regrets because, I mean, I'm here now and things have gone in a good direction because I've come to grips with it and been able to move on.
So how do you navigate the emotional ebbs and flows of the industry? Advanced publicist Jamelia Campbell says sometimes you need to compartmentalize.
I remember learning in like my first year of working in the industry was about kind of compartmentalizing and taking your ego and yourself out of things when things don't necessarily go your way or you don't land the interviews or whatever your targets are. It's not you as a failure, or it's not like your career is over. Like everything is ebbs and flows in this music industry. Sometimes things are really, really high and tons of things are happening. And sometimes things are dead. And you don't really control the media, you know, their response to things and how they respond to things. But you sometimes, especially when you like the artist or especially when you're passionate about the project, you feel like a personal responsibility to it succeeding. And then when that doesn't happen, sometimes you kind of take it personally. And so it's kind of separating, like not taking people's opinions so closely to heart. So the highs, they shouldn't be the highest ever. You can't take on all that praise and walk on air and think you're God. And you also can't take the negativity in the same breath. You can't think all your failures and your career is over and you're done. Like you'll bounce back. It's ebbs and flows of this music industry, and you're not told that in the beginning. That like sometimes there's high highs and then there's gonna be some low lows, and both are okay.
And Jermayne says it's recognizing that no means not yet.
One thing that we don't want to admit to ourselves as Black people is that we are proud people. We are extremely proud people. And sometimes that gets in front of us. So when we hear no's, we go, well, you know what? Psh, forget that. I'm not doing that anymore. That person doesn't like me, or this person doesn't get me, or whatever. And we write them off. That's not necessarily the case. I think a lot of the time it starts as a no. It's our job to be a proof of concept, and that's fine. I have no problem doing that. If we believe in ourselves or we believe in what we're doing or what we're trying to accomplish, that no will become a yes. And I think once that happens and once you experience that, every situation becomes the same thing. Anytime I'm speaking to someone and I'm like, oh, you don't get it yet? No problem. I'll see you in a year. I'll see you in 6 months. That'll be a yes. And that's what I had to learn through experience.
But Jesse's vision is bigger than pushing through the no. And this vision, when we attain it, will be beautiful.
We're always asking for permission. And that's because the system is built in such a way that it doesn't really have diverse thought in it. I'm not just talking culture. I'm talking just, there's not a diversity of offerings for us. Politically, in any sector, it's infrastructure, deeply rooted infrastructure that was created this way to maintain a lot of the things that we go through every day. So to be in the rooms of big financial institutions or auto companies or brands of whatever, and to be able to be like, hey guys, did you know about this? This is what's going on in culture right now and what people are talking about. And so maybe we might not want to do that approach because, oh, okay. Or here's what Black Canadians are talking about between the ages of 18 and 25. And here's what they're talking about, 30 to, here's what matters to the communities. And did you know that like Edmonton, Alberta is like one of the fastest growing like Black populations right now of African descent? Did you know what's going on the East Coast and the fact that like Blackness in Canada is very diverse, and how it changes when you're dealing with someone like people who've immigrated versus people who were born here. And so how reaching them is a different strategy than maybe, you know, the importance of faith in the Black community? There's a whole sector of faith-based, passionate, like to be able to be in these rooms and share this and actually have data. This might not sound sexy, but it becomes sexy because the programming that comes out, if these brands have access to this information, it changes. You know what I mean? And so you only see that from like growing up and seeing how important it is for the story to be accurate. And it becomes accurate when you have more people who look like the people you're telling the stories of designing the storytelling. It's not rocket science. And so, you know, I think that's what goes back to like Advance having these discussions and having these outlets. And I'm glad that you said like, you know, this is a unique conversation to be having, because that's great. I think that's amazing. I feel blessed to be in this seat right now talking and sharing these things, because to be able to be in those rooms and to be able to bring in people who they might not be looking at is great. And we need more of it.
The funny thing about mentorship is that you never know who might come into your life and plant a seed. And when they do, the decisions you make going forward will be everything. And they can be as simple or as complex as you make it. Tune in to next week's episode of Amplify to find out why.